Welcome back, everybody, to day 3 of EA Global Summit, virtual conference connecting global EA practitioners. This is Juhi from Summit team. We've been seeing fantastic response for this conference from EA community. We are having exciting and informative sessions coming up from speakers for the next few days too. We have sophisticated collaboration platform to give you all the best experience of attending the conference. For this session, we have Vish, Managing Principal, CC&C Solutions, presenting here full with tool. The topic sounds interesting. Just to bring your attention once again, we also have the Teams channel ready and set up for you to connect and interact with Vish and other practitioners after the session and throughout the summit. Please refer to the chat window to find the link. Please log your questions for this session to Teams channel shared in your chat window. Vish and his team will be answering the questions over the Teams channel. Now over to you, Vish. You can now present your session and thank you once again.
Thank you, Jugi. This is Vish here. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good day, wherever you are. Thank you for joining the session. So, fool with a tool. There is a proverb which most of us know and translated in different languages. A fool with a tool is still a fool. Again, this provocative topic was chosen by my friend Jason Bloomberg, whose reference you see on the screen. Is a futurologist. He featured me, fortunately, in the Forbes magazine, and the topic was "Don't be a fool with a tool." There are excellent tools. You have the whole week of sessions on Sparx, which is an excellent, comprehensive, full functional, and cost-effective tool. But having a tool is good, great. But how do you make it corporate grade tool? How do you make it into an enterprise? With what other ingredients are required to make it successful? That's a part of today's presentation topic. So let's start with the concept of the tool. The presentation follows. I'm going to follow the following kind of sequence. First, stepping back for a moment, we're going to look at what is EA, not the definition of EA, but what enterprise architecture, how is it positioned in an enterprise? Where does it fit into an enterprise? So for most of you who are actually using Sparx EA, many of you will be actually doing this anyway, but for some of you, actually it will be good to know where actually enterprise architecture is positioned and what are the three major key ingredients for enterprise architecture success, the tool being one of them. So the other two I'll be talking about will be the framework or a methodology or a process, and also having a notation. We'll talk about it in more detail later on. So the three key ingredients I'll be talking about: the tool, framework, and the notation, which sort of completes the triangle for success. Of course, don't forget the other important aspect. One that glues it all together is the people element. Are we having certified, competent people and the structure of the organization, which is different from each organization? So I'll be talking about that. And towards the end of the session, I'll be talking about two things. One is, what are the top 9 enterprise architecture myths? We want to blast those myths to say that they are not true. And on the other side of the coin, what are the top 9 EA challenges? What are the challenges for an enterprise architect? So towards the end, I would like to show you a glimpse of a corporate project, enterprise grade project that we were involved in with Sparx EA as the tool, and also with the other elements of the framework and the notation together. So it will bring it all together. And hopefully it will be a very interesting and valuable session for you. I'll be looking for some interesting questions from you as well. A brief introduction to CC&C, that's our organization. By the way, CC&C stands for Connect, Communicate, and Collaborate. So, for example, right now we are connecting. We started hopefully communicating, and there will be opportunities for collaboration. So the 3 steps in any relationship, whether it's human relationship or the system relationship, we first connect, then communicate, and the 3rd step is collaboration. So I like the slogan. That's the way the company has been operating for the last 17 years. We connect with customers, we communicate with them, and we find opportunities for collaboration, either as customers or partners. So we are a global strategy and architecture consulting organization, and we frankly live and breathe architecture. Whatever kind of architecture, solution architecture, enterprise architecture, communication architecture, security architecture, data architecture. Architecture is our core competence. We passionately believe in enhancing customer competence. We don't want to do everything ourselves. We enter into an organization, and our primary focus, the key focus is the customers achieving self-sufficiency. Once they get self-sufficiency, we get out. So interestingly, when we entered the US market about 6 or 7 years back, our slogan was, kick us out whenever you want. So that actually gave us a great motivation for customers to use us, because they have to be in charge of their own destiny. They are the masters of their own destiny. The enterprise architecture has to be carried out by the internal function. You cannot outsource it lock, stock, and barrel. However, you can take help from consultants and mentors and trainers like us. So we have worked with Sparx for several number of years. And as I said, this experience has been extremely good as a partner of Sparx. So in one of the recent engagements, we have trained over 1,000 IT professionals all over the world with a comprehensive scheme for architecture, covering Mexico, China, India, UK, and other places. So that kind of, we got a kind of a global presence, and also we actually culturally sensitive to each of the different regions. Okay, let's talk about enterprise architecture. How is EA positioned in an enterprise? On the top, you see the corporate strategy. We always start with the corporate strategy, the vision, goals, and objectives of the organization, and that gets translated into a set of blueprints. The blueprints and roadmaps are the key deliverables of an enterprise architecture function, besides other things. Of course, they manage the governance of the process as well, how this the blueprint is implemented in real terms, and then that typically that gets translated into a series of solutions underlined by various projects, and these solutions are handled primarily by solution architects. The solution architects make the things happen on the ground based on the enterprise architecture function. There's always an iteration that many times the solutions architects have to feed back to the enterprise architecture what works and what doesn't work, and the enterprise architecture gets corrected. So underlying the solution, of whether it's the enterprise architecture project or a solution architecture project, there is always, it's treated as a project. It has got a beginning and an end and deliverables and milestones and project. So the project management becomes an underlying discipline. And once the projects deliver the outputs, it's like a puzzle, Lego pieces. They all get together, combine together, and some of the Lego pieces are connected together, and that becomes the service delivery package. The service is delivered, and there's a feedback back to the corporate strategy and enterprise architecture. So gone are the days when they thought that the strategy function is a separate function. There's a brick wall between strategy and implementation. Today, strategy and implementation are working in a cycle, in an agile cycle. One feeds off the other. So what is defined in the strategy gets implemented immediately, and the implementation team, actually, or the solution architecture team, the project team, feeds back into the strategy. So it's a cycle. So that is the whole idea of the agile enterprise architecture, which is relevant to today's enterprises. So what are the three ingredients we're talking about in this presentation? Let's start with the tool, because the whole emphasis this year has been Sparx. As Sparx EA as a leading tool has been extremely useful in this in implementation of enterprise architecture and other solution architecture projects. Of course, it has to be complemented by a leading notation. The notation that I'll be talking about, and some of the others would have talked about in this conference, is Archimate. Like UML is a notation for the software and engineering and software architecture level. Archimate has been created by enterprise architects for enterprise architects. So it is the right level of abstraction. It's got the right level of notation for enterprise architects to define in a visual way what the enterprise architecture is. So it complements the tool, and Sparx and Archimate are very good combination, which is coming from the tool perspective. The other two ingredients are, of course, the framework. What is the framework? A framework is a set of methods, a set of processes, which has been the collective wisdom of people who have used this discipline before, so it's all documented. One of the things that most of you are familiar with is TOGAF, which is the Open Group Enterprise Architecture Framework. Then this is actually one of our core competencies. And of course, TOGAF creates its own meta model. It's got its own deliverables, it's got its own processes. The processes are generally classified into 4 categories. How do you create or evolve an enterprise architecture? While evolving, there is change. So how do you manage the change? While evolving, it has to be governed properly. So how do you govern the enterprise architecture evolution and the governance of projects arising from the enterprise architecture? And how do you measure success of the whole exercise? So effectively, a framework like TOGAF embraces 4 processes: the evolution process, change management process, governance process, and measurement process. And there are other vertical industry frameworks. One of the frameworks that we are actively involved is BION, Banking Industry Architecture Network, which actually a lot of banks got together and they created a framework which would be used for banks for defining their own solutions and components, and how banks can interact with each other, how the banks can open up the API so that their customers, their partners, other banks can collaborate with them. So that's the focus of BION as an example of a vertical industry framework. There are other vertical industry frameworks, like for example, telecom industry has got frameworks. You've got retail industry has got ARTS, and defense industry has got DODAF, things like that. And what really happens in the real world is that depending on the industry that the enterprise is in, they combine something like TOGAF, which is a cross-industry framework, and the vertical industry components to create a composite framework specific to that particular organization. Because each organization is different. No 2 banks are the same. No 2 insurance companies are the same. So the framework gets customized to their organization. That's part of the enterprise architecture engagement. The third element is, of course, the people. To make it successful, we need people. We need the right structure in the enterprise architecture team, and we need the professionals who are certified for a framework, certified for the notation, as well as proficient in the tool, and preferably certified. So this is actually a triangle of success. If you remember this, that's a key takeaway from this presentation will be these 3 ingredients: framework, tool, and the notation. So what does the enterprise expect from a tool? Let's look at each one of these elements in a little more detail. Sparx Enterprise Architect, with its products like ProCloud, Cloud Server, and Prolaborate, provide a comprehensive set of tools. So as from an enterprise architecture perspective, what's expected is the tool should be certified for EA framework. Whether it's used for BION or for TOGAF, it's good to have a certified tool. It's good to have a tool which is certified for the notation like Archimate. It should cover the entire EA life cycle, right from strategy all the way to implementation and service delivery. It embraces all EA processes. I mentioned these 4 processes of evolution process, change management, governance, and measurement, metrics. It embraces all the 4 processes. It's useful for all EA professionals, not just the core enterprise architects, but business architects, solution architects, project managers, service delivery professionals. Those functions which was adjacent to the enterprise architecture function can be used by everyone, because enterprise architecture is a collaborative exercise, and more they use the same tool, same repository, same notation, they are able to get better collaboration. So that's what's expected from a tool. So what does the enterprise expect from a framework? A framework must be comprehensive. Again, taking TOGAF as an example, you can see here a simple representation of TOGAF meta model. Many of you will be familiar with meta models. Meta model is, in simple definition, the model of models. If there's an enterprise, whether there's a bank, as an insurance company, or a government enterprise, if that's a physical enterprise, if you actually replicate it in a model sense, the model becomes a virtual representation of the enterprise. It's got its business processes, it's got its business goals and objectives and strategies, applications, systems, the data elements, technology, all tied together in a structured way in terms of components or building blocks. So that is the meta model. So in any organization, when we enter into an organization looking at the enterprise architecture engagement, the first thing we think about is how do you create a meta model for this particular organization? The second point is it has to be open. There are many frameworks which are proprietary, belong to a particular vendor. It's not completely, they don't disclose all the information. The open frameworks are completely documented, transparent. It can be taken, it can be customized, you can use derivatives from that very openly. Open framework. The third one is inclusive. TOGAF, for example, is an inclusive framework. It does not compete with other frameworks. TOGAF can be used with other vertical industry frameworks like BIAN or DODAF or ARTS or frameworks from Telecommunication Management Forum. It can be used with other frameworks. That's inclusive. It's widely accepted. There are about 80,000, TOGAF certified people in the world now. So it's widely accepted. Thousands of organizations, hundreds of organizations using it in one way or the other. It's got a very strong certification regime. That means when the customers employ a person who is certified in TOGAF, at least they know that there is a guarantee of, there's an assurance of quality. And that's what the certification regime gives. It's easy to customize. As I said before, no two banks are similar. No two insurance organizations are similar. So each organization is different based on its own culture, legacy, its attitude, its history, and the strategies. So the framework has to be customized for each organization. The framework like TOGAF is easy to customize, and it's adaptive and collaborative. You can, all the professionals, whether they are from business side or from the technology side, can work collaboratively. So that's what's expected from the framework, which is the second ingredient for success. The third one I'll briefly mention is notation. Why do you need a notation? When you actually draw models and use a tool like Sparx EA, if there are boxes and lines, it doesn't make any sense. So it has to have a notation. Of course, most of you are familiar with the UML. As I said, consider Archimate as a UML for enterprise architects. It's internationally accepted. It came from a very strong source in Netherlands, from a research background, and finally adopted by the Open Group a few years back. Currently, it's evolving all the time. It's easy to learn and use. It's fit for purpose across the EA spectrum. That means project managers, solution architects, enterprise architects, service delivery people, everyone can use it. As I said before, it's continuously evolving. It doesn't stop evolving. It's actually going version to version. It's getting more and more powerful and rich. It suits a range of stakeholders. That's what is needed in an architect's exercise. As most of you architects will know, that we are dealing with a range of stakeholders, right from business stakeholders, right up to the serious techos who deal with security or deal with data architecture and things like that. It offers excellent visualization. So it complements Sparx EA. Sparx EA provides excellent functionality, but along with Archimate, it becomes much more powerful. So that sort of gives you a brief outline of the three ingredients for success: the framework, tool, and the notation. So don't forget the important element, that's the people element. I would look at people element from two perspectives. What is the structure of the organization? Do we have the right skills at the right time at the right place? Because an architecture engagement or architecture program will require various kinds of skills, right from management skills to financial skills to strategy skills, and all the way to detailed technical skills in various kinds of domains. So it's impossible to expect one person to have all the skills. There is no such superhuman being. So you need a team. You need to put the right skills at the right place. That's a challenge of enterprise architect engagement. The other important thing about the people element is right mix of in-house skills. What is usage of contractors, and of course something can be entirely outsourced. So organizations will have to get the right mix. What is the core competence of the organization? Where do you want to develop your own skills? Where you can get external contractors, and where you can now completely outsource on a service basis. That brings me to the topic of investing in training and certification. Our organization, for example, is one of the early pioneers in TOGAF certification. We have trained thousands and thousands of architects all over the world. And recently, we also entered BIAN, which is the Banking Industry Architecture Network. We are one of the very few companies in the world who got a global footprint, and we got a certification, authorized certification trainer for BIAN. So, and we also get involved in organizations in designing the right structure, because the one year structure doesn't work for every organization. We need to find out the culture of the organization and work out the right structure for the organization. So these are the people elements which are very important in addition to the three other ingredients. So next I move on to two topics which are related. One is some of the myths of enterprise architecture and misinformation that's being spread, and we want to sort of blast those myths to start with. And then I will cover top 9 EA challenges before going into the specific model. The first myth is EA is a monolithic program. It will only yield results in the long term. With using the combination of Sparx EA tool, Archimate notation, and something like TOGAF, we can actually do enterprise architecture in small slices, each slice producing business value. You can slice and dice architecture to something that is consumable for each organization. So it doesn't have to be a monolithic exercise spread over a number of years. The second one is EA is an ivory tower exercise. The enterprise architects sit and draw diagrams. They don't get involved in practical implementation. It's a myth. A good enterprise architecture is as much hands-on as any other technical person. They drill down to the level of implementation so that what is drawn as a model gets implemented. The third one is EA tooling is expensive, complicated exercise. Of course, Sparx is a very good example to blast that myth, because very cost-effective tool. It's got the complete functionality, and it doesn't have to be a complicated exercise. You can do it in a simple steps. EA, and the other myth is EA is a governance exercise. We talk about governance all the time as something that you stick with, go with a stick and start beating people on the head, saying that you must do this, you must not do this. That's again a myth. Governance is not a stick exercise. It's more like an exercise of influence. How to influence people to use products. The other myth is generally, which I want to talk about, is EA always has to be top down with the full business architecture being implemented to start with. It doesn't have to be. With a tool like Sparx EA, you can start with application portfolio management. It can be middle up and middle down. We talk about the 4 layers of architecture: business, applications, data or information, and technology. You can start anywhere as long as it is done in the context of business. So we always have a small layer of business architecture, a thin layer to start with. Then we can go deeper to any of the other layers that you are comfortable with. The other myth is EA has to embrace whole organization at once at the same time. Doesn't have to be. You can start with one business unit. You can start with one pain point, one business pain point, and build on it like a Lego system. All the puzzle pieces get fit together. The next myth is EA is not agile. People talk about enterprise architecture on one side and agile architecture on the other side as if they are always enemies. It doesn't have to be. You can do EA in an agile fashion. And recently, there's a lot of initiatives that are taking place, especially in the open group, which is TOGAF comes from, in agile architecture framework. How do you get the benefits of the enterprise grade benefits from the EA at the same time? How do you be nimble and fast using agile architecture functions? The other myth I want to talk about at this time is EA professionals need not be certified. It's only a piece of paper. Why do you need a piece of paper? You can always do it. Which is a myth, because certification gives the assurance of guarantee. It gives at least a minimum level of acceptance, saying that these people have gone through a course, they got certified, they don't know what they're talking about. They're all on the same page. The other ninth myth I want to talk about is EA principles. Many organizations talk about creating principles by central group and sort of pushing it down the throat of other people. That doesn't work. The EA principles that we get involved in gets created from ground up. So these are some of the EA myths that I want to talk about. And many of you are involved in enterprise architecture activities, may be familiar with some of these things. But these come to my mind as the top 9 myths that are not really misinformation. The next thing I want to talk about, having talked about the myths, what are the 9 challenges? The first challenges is you have to customize the framework, tool, and notation, the 3 parts of a triangle, into something that's meaningful for the organization. Collecting as is information can be exhaustive because, how much information do you collect, what depth and what breadth? Again, that's something which consultants can help the organizations. Ensuring quality of input data. Many of you would have been involved in exercises of creating architecture deliverables. But if the input quality of the quality data is no good, what you produce is going to be useless. Okay, so how do you ensure quality of input data? The other challenge is, how do you define target architecture in a complex and ever-changing IT and business world? How do you measure the success of enterprise architecture? How do you set up the initial framework? How do you create a maturity model? How do you restructure the organization? Then coming to the people aspect, how do you get the right skills at the right place, which you talked about before? How do you reskill the existing workforce, which are actually generally a mix of people, right from legacy systems right up to modern emerging technology. The other challenge is, how do you cater for the huge workload we call as the EA startup process? That's where it's get important to engage external consultants and mentors in all these 3 areas: tools, framework, and notation, and get over the initial workload. How do you manage conflicts? And how do you get the right mentor? So it comes back, all these things points to one thing: choosing the right mentors for the organization. I used to call it as an insider and outsider combination. The insider is good because inside the organization, there are people who are familiar with the organization culture, they're familiar with the technologies, they can get things done, they can know the politics of the organization. The external outsider brings in best practices from outside. Outsider brings in the ability to think outside the box and experience from other similar organizations in the same industry and other industries. So the insider-outsider combination is what it actually makes the enterprise architecture successful. This is just a couple of slides to finish with. One is about a corporate grade EA tool project using Sparx EA that we were involved in. It's a large bank, and to start with, the situation looked like something like this. I call it architecture by accident. Nobody designed the accident. It evolved over a number of years. They brought several systems, several tools. It all sort of in a spaghetti-like fashion, without any particular, not well designed. So what are the characteristics of this architecture by accident? They were using disparate versions, different versions of Sparx. There are over 200 licenses, and there no standard notation. They were using their own sort of homegrown notation. No framework, no meta model to tie them all together. They were all working in silos. Each one was using the Sparx EA tool for a specific purpose. Some for application portfolio management, some for requirements gathering, some for a bit of solution architecture work. So there was no cohesion. And of course, there was no data quality. From that situation, we have to move to what is called as I call it as architecture by design. So what is involved in the process? The 3 ingredients we talked about were all used in this particular exercise. We chose TOGAF as the framework. So the meta model of TOGAF became the centerpiece, and then the notation was Archimate. And again, Archimate is an exhaustive notation. There's lots of different representations in Archimate, different ways of different symbols and all that. We don't have to use all of them. So we have to select and customize the one that's relevant to the particular organization, based on the organization's ability to understand its maturity, learning curve, etc. So the third one is, of course, the people. People were certified. They went through a Sparx EA training. Then they went through an Archimate certification. They also went through TOGAF certification. So all the 3 parts of the triangle were covered. So ultimately, through a series of projects, we created what is called as a banking platform, a platform that's relevant to the particular bank, comprising of all the three elements. And so what is the net result? Net result was one version of truth, a standard notation, a meta model, a simple meta model which can be used, understood by across the organization and can be rolled out very easily using Sparx EA. Collaboration using products like Prolaborate, and very orderly laid out process, so that it's easy to now to what appeared to be a very complex and spaghetti-like structure. We can move gradually towards a model which is much more well designed, well architected. So that was a project. And for most of you who are involved in Sparx implementations, implementing the tool and training the tool gives you some commercial advantage. But if you're looking for a stickiness in the customer, make the customer work with you for not only for a few months, for a few years, getting all the three elements in place gives that ability to get higher revenues and also stickiness over a number of years. In this particular project, after creating the platform, it was rolled out to different parts of the organization, and also we have to maintain it for X number of years and continuously enhance it. So you can see the longevity of this project as compared to a simple project where you sell a tool and then sort of train them and get out. So these are some of the models used in that. The left side is the simple meta model that was used for Sparx, and then this is the it shows the application portfolio dashboard, and it also shows the application portfolio management in terms of systems which are when it will be retired, when new systems will take place, things like that. So that gives you a simple snapshot of some of the visualization that was produced. So I want to finish here and just give you a feel for where you can go from here. And I want to emphasize two key takeaways from this presentation. One is the three ingredients for success. A tool is essential. Tool is the fundamentally required. But my message is, don't be a fool with the tool. You use the tool very effectively. You need other things. The two other things required is a framework, an open framework, and a comprehensive notation. And from the people perspective, what works is the insider-outsider partnership. Especially in the EA startup phase of enterprise architecture, there's a lot of work. There's a heavy workload and requiring different kinds of skills. You can create a nice combination of insider-outsider from an organization perspective. For those of you who are consultants and service providers, if you think beyond the tool, if you think of all the other elements, you can be the mentor. Instead of just being a service provider or an organization which supplies the tool or a tool seller, you can become a partner to the organization in this insider-outsider combination. So with that, I want to stop and hand over to maybe ask Juhi to see what kind of questions we have got. And we can take some of the questions now, and other questions I'm very happy to be chatting with you after this through the Teams session. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Vish. Thanks for the great presentation. So we'll wind down the session here, and if the questions coming up, I'll keep the Teams channel updated for you to post and support the participants. So thanks, Vish. Thanks for your time and efforts towards this summit. So thank you all once again for joining the session. The video of this session will be made available after the conference, and we will be notifying you all once it is available. Join MS Teams and continue the conversation with Vish and other EA experts too. Thank you so much. Keep connected for the rest of the sessions. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. See you.
Bye.